Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. So we're on hadith number 20 from the 50 hadiths for the softening of the hearts. And this one is called a cause of miserliness and cowardice. A cause of and these are two horrible qualities in any man. You go back to the poetry from Jahiliyyah, you see that the main qualities that they always praised in a man was that he was brave in battle, and that he was generous, and generous with his wealth, generous with the food that he had, generous with himself if the people needed him to help them or whatever. So this type of generous nature and bravery were the two best qualities. The two worst qualities that were ever found in a man were always miserliness and just being stingy, and being a coward. Somebody that the people could not rely on in battle. And I mentioned these lines from Shanfara in his famous poem Lamiyat al-Arab. I mentioned these lines. I mentioned two of the lines of that poem in my book, The 13 Definitive Characteristics of a Crackhead. And the lines of the poem are وَكُلٌ أَبِيٌّ بَاسِلٌ غَيْرَ أَنَّنِي إِذَا عَرَضَتْ أَوْلَى أَطْرَائِدِ أَبْسَلُ وَإِنْ مُدَّتِ الْأَيْدِي إِلَى زَادِ لَمْ أَكُنْ بِأَعْجَلِهِمْ إِذْ أَجْشَعُوا الْقَوْمِ أَعْجَلُوا. So here he said, وَكُلٌ أَبِيٌّ بَاسِلٌ. He said each one of the people around him, the people that he's with, the fighters, he said each one of them is staunch in resisting any attack and brave when it's time to take out the prey. You know, abiyun, it comes from the word abat, which means to refuse, because he refuses the enemy to move forward on them. So they call him abiyun. And basilun, that he's brave, and when he goes against the enemy, he goes against them with this type ferocity, right? He said, غَيْرَ أَنَّنِي, but I am, إِذَا عَرَضَتْ أَوْلَى تَرَائِدِ أَبْسَلُوا. He said, but I am the staunchest of them all. so he said, but I am the staunchest. He said, when it's time to take out the prey, but I am the staunchest and bravest of them all. You know, of course, he's bragging because that's the Jahiliyyah, and that's what they used to do. And then he said, when muddat al-aydi ila zadi lam akun. And he said, and when the hands of the people are stretched out to grab from the provisions, call it al-aydi ila zad, lam akun, I will never be. And this is obviously with the provisions of the military and the army, when they're handing out the rations and the food and whatever, because obviously they have to keep everything to where everybody gets a certain amount of food. Because if there's one person or a group of people that are eating up a lot, then people are going to end up starving. And how are you going to fight an enemy and you got people, almost starving to death, right? So he said when the hands are stretched out to grab those provisions, he said, "Lam akun bi'ajalihim," that I will never be the swiftest. I will never be the swiftest among them to grab from the provisions. He said, because he said that the greediest of people are the swiftest to grab from the provisions. And you see that, like the greediest of people are always the people who are the quickest to jump up and try to grab anything that's free or anything that's around. If the masjid is serving food, you're going to see them jumping up trying to be the first ones to stick their hands in the food. And he said that this is the greediest of people. So I mean, these types of qualities you see in the Arabs from before, because obviously this poem from Jahiliyyah, and you see this throughout poetry from Antara. You see this from poetry from all different poets from Jahiliyyah. That stinginess and cowardice are just the two qualities that's it. You're not a man if you have those qualities. You're not. They didn't accept you as a man. They didn't trust you, and you definitely weren't ever praised amongst the people. But nowadays, mashallah, these are the people that get the most praise. So the hadith and Ya'la al-Amiri radiyallahu anhu أنه قال جاء الحسن والحسين يسعيان إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فضمهما إليه وقال إن الولد مبخلة مجبنة رواه ابن ماجه. So Ya'la al-Amiri radiyallahu anhu reported Al-Hasan and Al-Husayn came running towards the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he grabbed them and embraced them. Then he said, sons are a cause of miserliness and cowardice. And this is not talking about in a bad way. All right. This is not speaking, because what it is that when you have sons, you tend to hold back money because you want to keep your money for them. So if money is needed, like other people come to you And, maybe if you didn't have children, you're just, you have money, but you're single and somebody needed money. You're like, here, take it, man. But when you have kids, then you start to like, let me check and see if I have enough money. I'll try to help you out with something. Let me see. You start to like, become like an accountant with your money now all of a sudden once you start to have, the children, right? And then he said it's also a form of cowardice because, if a war or a battle or anything happens, the first thing you think, oh, I can't, leave my family. Oh, what is my family going to do if something happens to me? And this causes the person to start to hesitate in a time that maybe when he was single or he didn't have, the children, the wife and all this, that he wouldn't have hesitated in that matter. Maybe if a war started, he'd have just grabbed a weapon and ran out. But now he's got kids and everything. Now his mind is going towards what about the kids? What if something happens to me? Who's gonna take care of my kids? Who's gonna take care of my wife? Who's gonna do this? And who's gonna And then it starts to cause the person to again watch his money and to be more stingy with his money and stingy with himself. So Allah Musa. And this is like what the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is talking about here is the nature. And this is nature. This is what happened. This is the nature of man. This is not something that's like it's a bad quality for a person to have these qualities in him, as natural disposition, just, leans towards being cowardly and being stingy. But, it's from the natural disposition of a person, of a man, that when he has kids, that he starts to hesitate with these things. He hesitates now with money. He hesitates with himself. This is natural. And it's something that you have to battle. Because, and you see, how many people have you seen that were the craziest people, out on the streets or wherever, but and then they, somehow he straightens up a little bit, he gets married and he has a child and he completely changes. It's not the same person. He's not even thinking about the stuff that he used to do anymore. He's now thinking about like family and making sure that they're taken care of and everything, because that's how a man thinks. The man is thinking like a provider. I have to make sure that my family has something. And that if I go to war and get killed, then what am I thinking? I'm thinking, okay, who's gonna take care of my family? And these types of things are just natural. These are natural. But if the person allows these things to stop him from carrying out his obligations as a Muslim, then obviously then those things become now those qualities are not good. The hesitation is one thing. The hesitation is natural, but there's things that you have to if something's wajib. You have to do it, you have to do it. You might hesitate, but you still go through and you do what you have to do. But if the hesitation becomes you not doing, and stopping the things that that's wajib upon you now because, whether it's from spending or whether it's from going out and, defending this deen, if it becomes an obligation upon people to do that in a certain area because maybe the enemies attack that certain area. If the enemies attack that area, you can't sit around thinking like, oh, my kids, because if you sit in your house and everybody sits in their house, you ain't gonna have no kids anyways. So you have to stand up, you have to get out there and defend it. That's what you're defending. You're defending the deen, but you're also defending your families. Keeping the enemy away from your family. So, it can't be hesitation in those times. There might be hesitation, but you can't just, I'm not going to do that. I can't go out. I can't do this because my family. Who's going to take care of my family? Well, if you lose everything and the kuffar come in and destroy all of our countries, what family are you going to have anyways? So almost time. But, yeah, I mean, as long as it doesn't lead to the person leaving off the things that are obligation, like I said, we as you get older, you start to hesitate more. You start to think more. You start to you definitely start to come up with more excuses as you get older. Whereas when you were younger, you might have just been like a fireball. Every single thing that comes up, hey, you need money, take it. Oh, it's a fight, let's go fight. But now you grow up and you mature a little bit and you got responsibility. So now your mind is going towards those responsibilities, but don't allow it to stop you from doing the things that's an obligation upon you. Wallahu musta'an. Wa ila huna subhanaka wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.